Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of SciVivor Sunday. Got a fly flying around in here. So, yeah, very excited to get into some deep diving today with Gunther's going to show up in a little bit here and talk about his experience with being in a religious cult and what it took to get out of that and all of his. I'm intrigued to find out how he came about finding the mental state of, oh, this is a cult and I maybe shouldn't be associating with these people or these ideas. Sorry, one moment. All right, so before he shows up, I'm going to go ahead and give you all a little bit of background of my own religious experience. I think that's fair. And the stream's not so much about me, so we'll get that out of the way before he gets here. So I grew up with a very devout and still very devout Christian mom. She had us going to a Pentecostal Christian church. So from birth until I was probably about 12 or 13, I went to, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was like Christ the King, something like that. Little church in Walnut, California. And I remember there being a lot of tambourines, a lot of streamers, a lot of people running up and down the aisles. I remember really just wanting to be more a part of things that I didn't really quite understand at that age. So, for example, within the Pentecostal movement, there is the ideal that you need to do what is called speaking in tongues, and that you're not saved unless you're speaking in tongues. So, for those of you that may not have any religious kind of background, the term being saved basically means that your soul is saved because you have dedicated your soul and your life to, in this case, the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And to speak in tongues, it comes from, there's a biblical passages that speak about this, where it basically you're what they call you're filled with the Holy Spirit, and this Spirit comes upon you and you start to speak this language that's most of the time not understandable. It sounds like gibberish. So I had heard while I was in the church that there have been instances where people would speak in tongues and it was another language that somebody actually understood, which is interesting. But in this case, it was really just, it was just kind of like a gibberish, mumble jumble kind of talk. And I remember being about 12, and this is right before I decided to kind of put this religion behind me at that point. But right before that, I went to a camp with all of these other Pentecostal Christians, and it was a youth camp. It was a bunch of kids, and we basically had lots of praying, lots of laying on of hands, which is people will just put their hands on you. Basically and it's interesting because a lot of these ideals and principles are not unique to Christianity or to Pentecostal Christianity. So, for example, now that I'm older and I understand, I have a larger worldview, I kind of see the laying on of hands as similar to Reiki. If you all have heard of Reiki healing, it's where someone will not even actually touch you, but they move their energy through their hands, and they'll basically use this spiritual flow to heal you in ways. So I just remember being there and thinking to myself, I need to do this because this is what everybody else is doing. And if I don't do this, I'm not saved. And I also remember, really quick backtracking, I also remember wanting to go up and get saved over and over again. Because I just felt like every time I went to church, I wasn't good enough. and I had probably done something wrong and that I needed to get resaved. So a lot of guilt, a lot of just feeling like, you're not good enough, that you're, not going to be able to, um, sorry, one second. Multitasking. But yeah, just like that I wouldn't get into heaven. So with that in mind, getting older and still being in this religion, I faked it. I faked speaking in tongues. I was just like, okay, well, this is what we're doing, so I'm just gonna do this. Eventually, I left that church mostly because I was coming of age and my parents didn't, it was like at that point where they couldn't make me go anymore, right? Like I'm not gonna go to church, mom. So for a couple years, I feel like I was starting to find myself and I was starting to come into my own without this religious bubble around me. And it's kind of a cool full circle story. Yeah, I may not get into all of it, but basically I ended up getting really into I started smoking weed, got into drum, like a lot of electronic music, and just really, kind of just started to be my own self in my like preteen years. And then got into high school. And in high school, there's this one moment that just changed the course of my life, basically. I'll never forget it. I had bought a bag of weed, about a dime bag back in the day. And I was saving it because I wanted to smoke on the weekend. And someone stole it from me. A friend stole it out of my bag. And I found out later that a friend had stolen it. I was just like, okay, that sucks. I just really like put a bad taste in my mouth and I didn't want to hang out with them anymore. That ended up leading me to hang out a lot more with people that were in band, band geek. And the outcome of that was I ended up hanging out with this girl who was a born again Christian and ended up going to Calvary Chapel with her and became born again. And that was my life for, let's see, I was probably 15 at that time, probably 10 years. I would say for a good 10 years of my life, I was a born again Christian. I I went to Utah to convert Mormons to Christianity. I went to India to try to convert people that were Hindu and all these other religions to Christianity. Yeah, I was about it. And that's my personality in general. I'm all or nothing kind of person. Like if I mean, and I missed the camaraderie, the worship until I got back into the Hex community. Honestly, like this community has really become church for me. That's why I love doing this on Sundays and I love having y'all here and, being a part of this community. To me, this is church. And we're here to, build up one another, talk about, what we're going through. And that might not be what everybody needs or wants to do within this community, but it's definitely something that I'm going to continue to do. So without further ado, let's bring on someone who wants to talk about their experience in this crazy world of religion.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
What is up? Great. It's going good.
I'm so sorry that I'm late. I know
No
that's
worries.
like disrespectful and like I should know better. Like I have a military background, so like it's supposed to be like 15 minutes prior, else like you're late. So yeah, I'm really sorry. It's been a hectic morning.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
You have a fascinating story though. I was listening since the beginning, so I caught most of it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's been a journey. My mom is still very religious, and I've actually come I was very jaded for a while after I got out of religion. I was just like, oh, I don't want to hear about the Bible. I don't want to talk about Jesus, nothing, like I was just like, oh, that's all junk, very upset about it for quite a while. But I've come now to a place of respect, of understanding, of appreciation even. And I love that my mom, she's a prayer warrior, right? Like she has her group of women that she hangs out with and they pray all the time. She always tells me she's praying for me. And I used to be like, no, don't pray for me. But I love it. But no, now I thank her because I know that, regardless of what religion, right, that she's associated with or however that works, I believe that those thoughtful intentions are meaningful and purposeful, and that
Yeah.
they have an effect on my life.
Yeah.
So
And like, you also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, even though you may not follow how you were raised, or even though you may not believe like all the doctrines that you were brought up with, there's still like a lot of good elements that are there, which could help shape
right.
you into becoming like a really good human being. Like, for example, like just loving people and like being generous, like forgiving people, like acknowledging like your mistakes, that kind of thing. So I think there's still like, you don't want to just like throw out everything. It's good to kind of have
Absolutely.
introspection, So is the lighting bad in here? Hold on, let me maybe turn on
It's a
a few
little
more.
dark.
Yeah, give me a second.
No worries. No worries. I'll just say hi to chat real quick. What is up, everyone? Thanks so much for joining us. We got Toby Wan, Chris Side Effects, Bit Finesse, Hex Metal Barbie, War Ants. Why Bit Finesse? Did I say that already? Hexographer, Hex Mix, Sticker Guy Win,
Yeah, nice.
and Steaknomics. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you being here.
I'm almost sticker guy after this at 3 p.m.
Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so back to back.
Good times. Yeah, you've been busy. You've been a busy man.
You have no idea. And I've like been barely sleeping. Like even this morning, I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I started looking like I saw like a couple of transactions, and so I got curious and started digging deeper. And the next thing you know, it led to like 6 hours of like research and then just like ranting on Twitter.
Wow.
So yeah, and I only slept like a few hours last night, so I'm a little bit groggy. Coffee.
That's all. Well, thank you. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. Sweet. So yeah, I mean, we could just jump right in. I'm super intrigued. I guess it sounds, from what I heard, I think I don't remember which stream I was listening to, but it sounds like you grew up in this cult.
Yeah.
Like you were born into it, basically.
I was born into it, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know, some people might like be misled by the term like cult. So like,
right.
I guess I'll just clarify, like it's not a cult of like who is it, Jim Jones with the drinking the Kool-Aid, or everyone like that, or whatever. So it's not like that
religious
type of cult.
fanaticism.
Yeah, it's not like where you're like, like killing yourselves, but it's actually, I think, it's very dangerous because it's so subtle, because it's all like indoctrination, and it's indoctrination to the nth degree, where the ideologies and the doctrines are really extreme. They're not like normal, like mainstream, like Christianity type of doctrines, but they always go off the deep end. And so I guess it's good for the audience, like if you do whatever like faith that you have, or whatever belief system or belief structure that you have, you don't want to go too extreme in any direction, just in general. It's good to kind of be somewhere in the middle. It's at least that's my opinion. but yeah. So I grew up being part of this like global radio station type of group called Family Radio that predicted the end of the world. So on multiple occasions, and got it wrong every time. Of course, clearly the world is still here. So yeah, the world didn't end. But yeah, I grew up in that type of background since I was born, basically.
So at what point did you start to come to the realization that this was something that, you didn't want to prescribe to anymore, or that you just saw the fallacy in it?
Yeah, it took me a long time, to be honest. So like at the age of, I would say at the age of like 15 and 16, maybe around 15 or 16, I actually became like totally like bought into like everything that I had been brought up with. When I was younger, like there was some like resistance, but then around that age, I think I was just too vulnerable, and my life was already like fucked up. It was like a recipe for disaster. So I was bought in, and I did not have a normal like I did not have like a normal life. At least that's how I would classify it. It was so like, to give the audience an idea, like at the age, I know the Bible so well, I probably have the equivalent of a PhD in theology, although I've never actually studied, like I don't have like a formal training, but like I guarantee you, I could talk about the Bible with any pastor in the world and be able to anticipate how they might interpret a specific like text or whatever, and then have like a counter argument and be able to back it up with like different texts across the board, like in the Old and the New Testament. So I know it pretty well. I was a Sunday school teacher at the age of 16. I was teaching adults, like people like really aged. So yeah, that's not. Anyway, it's very like interesting like background.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So just stop. By the way, just stop me if like something like catches your
No.
attention, if you have questions or
Oh, I
people.
will. Yeah. I'll bring up this little thing real quick. Bit Finesse says, religious people get together and could be talking about freeing people in the real world. This has always bothered me about religion. To touch on that point, this might not be the same, not kind of in the same vein. When I started to, as an adult, when I started to actually decide that I was not going to really subscribe to these ideologies anymore, I had been working at a Christian bookstore. And I remember just being so turned off at how much money was being spent on like Thomas Kincaid pillows and monogrammed Bibles. And I just kept thinking to myself, what is it? What are we doing? Like, couldn't this money be going towards something so much more important and so much better?
Yeah.
You know, like why are we spending all these like hundreds and thousands of dollars on this like merchandise when, you know, as Christians, we're supposed to be helping our brothers and sisters. And, you know, I think it's like there's this bigger view, right? That doesn't really get addressed. It's like you go to
Yeah.
church on Sunday and it's like people keep it as such a personal journey, which it is, and it should be. But it seems like the gist of any kind of or not any kind of, but like, you know, that kind of organized religion is to help your fellow man. And I'm like,
Well,
where is
there's
this
actually a
money
lot of
going?
corruption. There's a lot of corruption there. Like I'm surprised I don't see some of these pastors rolling up to their congregations like in a Ferrari and a Lambo, because they
Oh,
definitely
for
could.
sure. Yep.
They probably don't for sake of optics, but let's face it, like they're making millions and millions of dollars. And like what is that like? Do you really need to be making that much money if you're in that type of position? You probably want to be living like super like frugally and like humbly and like eating fucking ramen noodle soup and shit to kind of set like, you know, I'm not saying you have to, but like to set like a good example for like other people type of things, just in that type of position. I'm talking about like those crazy like mega churches where there's like
Mega churches. Yeah. I mean, even I remember the Calvary Chapel that I went to for a long time. Raul Reese was the pastor, and he had I remember seeing his car. It was a Lexus. It was like a nice souped up big SUV Lexus thing, you know, and I was just like,
it's just not the best in terms of like optics, right? Because like your message is you want to like help the world and make it better and like feed the impoverished and like just love your neighbor and like basically be like Jesus. And so it kind of sends like a conflicting message,
right.
You know, if you're just like cashing out from the offering plates and like living up like this like lavish life, you know, I don't know, but yeah. But I think Bitfinesse also made a really good point that like when you're like a lot of these like religions, like if you're really brainwashed and indoctrinated, you're essentially a slave in a prison house. You're in the jail cell, shackled to like the ground. There's no keys around, and there's actually no way to get out. You have to actually sit there and think for years and years and years. And it's not that you would think it, but like you really have to like kind of think of an out of the box way to get out of that prison house. How can you free the world if you are a slave to these doctrines? Like you can't. You don't even know how to help yourself, much less any other people. So it's kind of I don't know if that's what he was talking about, but it's an interesting like thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember the guilt. Someone mentioned earlier, like guilt never worked on me, but yeah, God, it just. I mean, I didn't have sex till I got married, y'all. The first time.
Yep. Hey, same here. Same here. It sounds bad, right? Yeah, same.
Yeah.
My ex-wife was the first person that I had sex with. I was 24 years old. Because to give like context for the audience, the way I was brought up is like, oh, like it's good for a man not to touch a woman. So like you can't even like hold her hand or like hug her or like anything. Like you just like keep your distance, and then it's only for like marriage. But it sets you up for just that it's such a trap, because if you think about it, if you don't, like when you have sex with someone, like it reveals it can reveal like major like problems that exist in the relationship. And if you don't have like an emotional connection, then you're already doomed, like from the get-go.
Right.
Like you're told, like, so why would you like do that later? Like logically it doesn't make sense. But
no,
with this type of belief system, it's not about logic. It's about like, here's a set of doctrines. This is how you're supposed to live your life. And even though there's many interpretations for said doctrines, like this is the way, depending on like what type of sect you grow up in under the umbrella of like Christianity or any other type of religion. I can't speak about other religions except for mostly about Christianity, because that's just the scope of my knowledge. So I'll probably just stay.
Same. Yeah, no, I agree. That was my journey. It's just
when did you get married? How old were you?
So the first time I was 20.
Oh, 20. Okay. Oh,
yeah, I was youngin'.
Okay.
Or
is this
I've been married and divorced twice. No, it's all good. I'm totally an open book. Yeah. The second time was within the it was like 2015, and that was a clusterfuck. It was like married a guy and found out, or like he was very emotionally abusive, and that emotional abuse became physical abuse, and I was like, no.
You already have enough emotional abuse growing up in this type of like religious setting, and I think people I don't think people really understand that to grow up with this type of indoctrination, it is the most harmful form of like abuse imaginable. Like by the way, I totally love my parents. They're great people. Like I think they did a great job. They did the best that they could under the context of like their belief system, or in the context of their belief system. But the fact of the matter is, like, you still do get damaged in the process, just based on like the doctrines and the ideologies that you're taught, because like as you think, that's what you believe, and what you believe is your decisions are based on like your belief system. But then if your belief system is warped, then your decisions are warped. If your decisions are warped, your life is fucked. Like you will get into all kinds of situations where it really can be super, super bad without getting into too much detail. What's up, Motley?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Motley, thanks for joining. And Oxwill, good to see you. So I'm curious, how are your parents now? Are they still a part of that same religion, or they do other religious things?
They still believe a majority of the stuff that I grew up with. Some doctrines have changed over time, which is also another interesting thing. Like they don't necessarily maintain the same beliefs over time based on like like if they read different texts, they start to interpret it maybe differently with like new information, or they update their religious like worldview. But yeah, so they're pretty much believe the same. But my mom is interesting. My mom is she's a lot more like relaxed and open-minded now. So like I smoke weed with my mom, and like we'll drink wine, watch Netflix or like whatever. So so yeah, and my dad is also very chill and laid back. So yeah. Anyway, I have a pretty good relationship, I think, with my parents, and trying to make it stronger over time. Getting ready to see them soon, and they live in California, so
nice
to visit them in the summer. So, but awesome. They did a pretty good job. But yeah, the belief system definitely is very
So the family radio, it's still alive and kicking.
It is, but it's not the same. Yeah. So like I grew up, so like I was basically taught by Harold Camping, the famous like doomsday predictor or doomsday evangelist, and he died a few years back. But I grew up like listening to him as a child, and then when I was older, when I was 19, I actually left Ohio and moved to California. And I worked at a radio station. I worked at the family radio station for 5 years in Oakland, California. I was an audio engineer. I did a little bit of announcing, but not that much. Mostly just like putting together like pre-recorded like broadcast or whatever. And then it would just like everything was essentially pre-recorded. Very few things were live. But that was an interesting experience. So,
Gotcha. Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny. I'm actually in Ohio now.
Oh, okay, nice. Are you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to dox you like specific location,
Oh,
but
no, I totally like road tripped, like live streamed my road trip the whole way here.
oh,
I'm in
okay, okay.
Sandusky.
Are you close to like
Yeah.
Columbus or?
No, Sandusky.
Oh, Sandusky. Okay, that's
Yeah.
northern, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was like right in the middle, north middle point.
yeah, yeah. I've been there. Close.
Yeah.
Is that close to Cedar Point or?
Cedar Point. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. Okay.
actually why we're here. My boyfriend,
Okay.
he's a rollerblader, and he's going to
Okay.
be doing their ramp like stunt extreme sports show for the summer. So
Okay. Interesting. All
yeah,
right.
that's what
Sounds
brought us
fun.
out here. Yeah,
Nice.
it's so I grew up in Southern California, but I've lived in Austin the last 15 years,
Oh, okay.
and
Cool.
the heat in Austin, it's going to be over 100 degrees probably for the next 30 days plus, like
Yeah.
the whole summer. Like it's wretched, but here it's like 72 and it makes my
Yeah.
heart smile.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
It's
just
nice. You can get fucked with heat in Southern California or Northern California, like Sacramento. Like you could get like 112 degrees, but then also like you could get wrecked in Texas too. Because I lived in
oh, for
Texas.
sure.
I lived in Abilene,
Okay.
like
I had a friend from
10
Abilene.
minutes away from like a wind farm. Yeah. I lived
Hmm.
there and man, it was fucking brutal. Now imagine this. You don't like the heat. Imagine it's like 112 degrees and you got to go climb a 300-foot wind turbine with all your gear and like safety gear. And then you have to go inside like a transformer room with like a like
Oh,
3-phase, like crazy amounts of like energy. And like you're just dying. Like as you go up, they have at this particular wind farm like man lifts, we call them like elevators or whatever, but like
mhm.
more like construction site elevators. And like as you're going up, like you just start to like panic almost because the heat is just like overwhelming. So like like you get up there and like you take your t-shirt and like basically wring it out and like it's
Ugh,
just sweat. Like, yeah, it's kind of gross, but yeah, pretty bad.
can't handle it. Cannot. So yeah, I'm glad to be somewhere a little cooler this summer. I'm going to show up this comment here from Hex Metal Barbie. I really this is how I felt being in that Christian bookstore. It says you'd think people who know the Bible, I think this means would draw a correlation between Jesus turning over the tables in the temples to modern Christian bookstores, mega churches, and Christian music festivals.
Yeah,
For
that's a good
sure.
point. Actually. Yeah, I like
That's
it.
how I felt. I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
man, like why is all this money going to all these like tchotchke things that no
Honestly,
one
it's a if you think about it to a very high degree, it doesn't mean that everyone is like corrupt, right? Because like you also don't want to like misjudge people. There's a lot of good people that believe in Christianity and live I think a life that's as close as you could probably get to like what the Bible would require of people. But like there's so much corruption and to a very high degree, like in a Christian bookstore or churches, whatever, it is essentially a money-making scheme. Like, for example, if you really cared about people reading the Bible, why wouldn't you just like raise like offering for that, create the Bible or order the Bibles and then send them away for free? Why do people have to pay for them? Right.
Right.
And why are they buying all this other like fancy like bullshit that they don't even really need?
Yeah, this is an interesting point. War Ant says, growing up as an orphan, religion was forced upon me by foster homes, which is that's an interesting point because it seems like a lot of foster programs, a lot of adoption programs are very religion based, or the companies, the people that place these people. It's like, you usually are gonna find that the homes where these children are placed in are religious homes because the programs are affiliated to church or some sort of religious organization. So that's an interesting thing to think about. I mean, I was adopted. It did happen through the church, but not a program. It was a closed adoption. So my mom, my parents that raised me, they'd been trying to have a child for like 8 years. And then through a friend of hers, her friend's friend found out that there was this woman having a child, and the woman had just been saved. And like the story, I've actually met her since, but so the story goes is that she'd had abortions previous and then got saved and decided to give me up for adoption. I remember when I was really religious, I had a button that said, "I survived abortion." It was like edgy. And yeah, so they ended up like basically I was born in the hospital. She had to name me. Interesting fact, on my original birth certificate, my name that my birth mother gave me, first name Christian, middle name Joy. So that was my birth name, Christian Joy, and then whatever her last name was. So because she knew she was giving me up for adoption. So she
Yeah.
wanted to just like, give me that kind of name, and then my parents
Yeah.
renamed me. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what is your what is your name?
My real name. Dun, dun, dun. No, I told Richard when he asked it one time, because what does SJ stand for? So Sarah Joy.
Okay, all right. That's right.
And that
That's
is,
right. I remember you from the other streams. Yeah.
yeah,
Sarah,
that
Sarah
is a
Joy.
name of
Okay.
my own doing. Like they named me Sarah, but later on in life, I decided to add the Joy.
Yeah,
So
nice. That's a
yeah.
nice like amalgamation, and shows like that you. I guess it's a nice show of respect, I think. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Even though like at this point, and I've talked about this a little bit before, I don't talk to my birth mother anymore, because I believe that she has mental issues that she doesn't realize or won't address, and she's a like narcissist, like a borderline personality narcissist kind of person. I'm just like, thanks for not aborting me, but I can't handle like, like it was a lot of just like, venom. She's very venomous.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't need that.
It's crazy that that sometimes just random like strangers, you just have a more a stronger emotional connection with them. Like somebody does not need to be your biological mother or father to be your mother or father, or even like you even when it comes to like brothers and sisters, like someone just like a random stranger you might have a stronger emotional connection with them than your own blood. And we hate to think about this stuff, but it is the reality. Just happens, sort of happens that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And another funny fact, because you just said siblings. Right after I got adopted, my parents got pregnant. After trying, and apparently that happens a lot.
Well, we live in
mean
mean world and clown world, so it kind of makes sense.
Right? Like,
you would
okay.
expect that, yeah.
Now we've got our own child, yeah.
I did grow up in a very large family. I'm one of 15 kids, same mother, same father.
Oh, that I did not know. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. So where are you on the?
I'm the second oldest. I have an older sister.
Okay.
And then the youngest sister, I think now is, oh gosh, how old is she? 19, maybe. Hopefully she's not listening. Somewhere thereabouts. I'm like really bad with like ages and like birthdays, because like there's so many. But it's all individual births, no twins.
Dang.
Crazy upbringing.
Now, was that part of the church? Like a lot of the church members have lots of children. Is that a thing?
Well, so let's highlight. This will actually demonstrate the point that I was making earlier, that like the way that you believe could actually lead you into making some maybe just not the best decisions. Even though like I at this point, right, like you would never like not want to have like a brother or sister, right, that you already have. But like they were under the belief that you basically have an unlimited number of kids, because God is in control. Like God will dictate basically how many kids you have, and then they'd basically twist and sort of like manipulate the doctrines in Genesis or texts in Genesis where it talks about like be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So that just means like how they would just interpret that as like just have an unlimited number of kids until God basically closes your womb type of thing.
Wow.
So that's exceedingly harmful. Like my mom was warned by so many doctors, stop having kids, stop having kids, stop having kids. And she almost died in childbirth, a few times. So yeah, that sort of just highlights that like the way that you believe actually affects the decisions that you make in life, whether you're aware of it or not. And that could have catastrophic consequences. So for example, imagine how hard it is to financially support and emotionally support 15 kids. You essentially had to everyone was essentially fending for themselves.
Yeah.
Here you are, welcome to the world. Now you just take care of you. And if you were older, you had to take care of everyone else. So
so I can imagine you stepped into that role quite a bit.
Yeah,
you and your older
there
sister.
was many times my parents would have to go away and do something, and then I basically just run the house. make sure
Good.
the kids, make sure everyone stayed alive. Like, I can, like, nobody like got terribly hurt. Like, people ate and like basically like brushed their teeth and like laundry got done. It's pretty hectic actually.
Yeah, I'm going to share a comment here because this is important too. You know, Hexaconnect says, growing up in a Christian church was my saving grace. At home was brainwashing, abuse, and manipulation.
Oh,
You
interesting.
know, so
So that's like
it
different twist.
definitely, yeah, yeah. And I definitely believe that that can happen, you know, and I think it
Yeah.
is depending upon the church and things, you know, like I said, I went from being super jaded about it all to like, you know, you do you. And I know that there is goodness there as well. You know, you find a good church, you find a good group of people, like, you know, more power to you. Like, you know, someone like Crypto Heartbeat, I love, you know, the way that he comes across with, you know, he's not shamed, you're not ashamed at all about, you know, what he believes. And I love the whole idea of the compassion cartel. I'm a member of that too, you know, because I think yes,
It's a
that
funny
people
name,
can
Compassion Cartel.
compassion cartel, yeah, you know, people can definitely work together to do a lot of good, you know, even though I'm not, you know, I don't personally subscribe, you know, to that religion, but I respect it and I admire when it, you know, when things like this happen, right? When
Yeah.
good comes out of it, you know, that's the other side, right?
Yeah.
So
I
I'll
like
just
it.
say that.
Yeah, I've gone from some like crazy extremes to where, like, on the one hand, I was like so indoctrinated that, like, well, normal like young people that were like 21 or 22 or 23 just living life and enjoying life. Like, I'm at home, like, you know, like reading like text and like looking up like word like different words in like Hebrew and Greek, and then because like Hebrew and Greek are even though I can't speak those languages and I can't read them, there's tools that you could use, lexicons and dictionaries and all kinds of stuff where like, so like Hebrew and Greek, Hebrew language is very expressive. Like, you can't just use like one word in English
Right.
for like a Hebrew word. Like, one Hebrew word could mean like, you basically might have to define one Hebrew word with like 40 different English words and
Like
all the
love.
nuances
I know
of
that's a
all
big
those
one.
words. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
There's different words, of course, but yeah, there's so yeah, it's crazy. But so so on the one extreme, I was doing that, but then I went all the way to another extreme. In 2012, I mentioned this on a previous live stream. I lost a brother to suicide.
Mm.
Um, it was a very traumatic event for my family, and it is somewhat related to how we grew up, although like there were other issues and factors I think that led to him doing that. But like, after he died, I was in so much pain that night. I remember I was in Ohio at my parents' house, and I like downed a whole bottle of wine. I was just like, everyone in my family was just hurting. Like, you can't even like process that type of uh, pain that comes out of the blue, out of nowhere. So like, we like, some of us were just like laying on the sidewalk or the pavement, just like closing our eyes and just like thinking, and like people, you know, of course, crying and stuff. And I remember that night, or maybe it wasn't that night, maybe a few nights later, we had like a bonfire. I took my Bible, I threw it right in the fire. I was like, fuck it, I can never go back to that, because it had just, there was just so much pain for me and harm, and my soul was just hurting.
Mm.
But yeah, hard to talk about, like
Yeah.
hard to talk about
No,
this stuff.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for opening up for, yeah, talking about that. It's interesting, not as traumatic, but that reminded me of my bye-bye Bible story basically. I'll never forget, I was in Austin and I had already started mm, emotionally and like mindfully moving away from the church. I had stopped kind of going to a church. I had divorced that first husband, and or was going through the divorce, and had, you know, just kind of started living this different life. And I remember my best friend in the world, she's a lesbian, and she came out to me. She had come out to me years prior, and I was just like, of course. Like, you know, I was like, well, that makes total
Yeah.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, of course you're gay, girlfriend. Come on. So, you know, so I had known it. And then at this point in time, she finally came out to her family. And her parents had been to me they had been like the last standing, like, iconic family. Like, they would pray together, and like I respected and appreciated their relationship with God. And she came out to them, and she was disowned. Her father physically like hurt her, and that, like, I was already kind of like dangling on a string in terms of like how much I wanted to prescribe to this, and that just snapped it. I was like, that's it, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
if that is what a Christian family looks like, if that's what being Christian is, I don't want any part of this. Like, that
Yeah.
is just not something that I want to subscribe to, because I always just kind of, that was always something that rubbed me the wrong way, was that like people who were gay or queer are unaccepted, and not
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
right.
And
And I'm just like, that just doesn't.
they'll start quoting like Old Testament passages about like stoning people. Like if a man sleeps with a man,
Yeah.
he's stoned to death, like in Leviticus or something. And like, but meanwhile, they forget like passages in the New Testament where Jesus was like, he that is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Everyone walked away. Right. So like people have such a twisted view. And I've found actually that a lot of the people that I grew up with, not all of them, so bear in mind, a lot of them were very good people, but there was also a high percentage of people that I grew up with. Some of the most evil people that I have met in my life are religious, judgmental, just full of hypocrisy. The ones usually the ones that are the most judgmental, the irony is that they are projecting all of their judging onto the people for the actions or the sins that they have themselves commit. So like, for example, if you have someone that really hates gays and just like bashing them, there's a high probability that they actually might be gay.
Have those like, tendencies or feelings that they can't.
They're just projecting all of that onto other people. So like that's I've just seen some really atrocious things, like like whether it's adultery or whether it's like just doing some like really heinous like things. I don't know. It's just so hypocrisy is like a big thing. I would say like, if you are going to live whatever life you're going to live based on a set of beliefs, or you're going to follow some text, then I think you really have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, is your life actually genuine? And are you a good example for that like belief structure? So I realized after many years, by the way, it took me 27 years to break free from this. So basically a slave to this belief structure for 27 consecutive years. I finally realized after a long period of time that I was actually a fraud, that that I was pretending to be something that I was not, that was not true to myself. And not only was I lying to other people without really knowing, but I was lying to myself. That this is, I knew like this is not how I want to live my life. I'm essentially living a lie. And there was, if you talk about like, I guess this kind of ties into the guilt. So like guilt is probably what kept me, guilt and fear are the two elements that kept me brainwashed for 27 years. And there's so much guilt because growing up from like in my background, and you would have very similar background.
Yeah.
The Bible requires a lot of you. Actually, the Bible requires perfection. Like you have to perfectly obey every single commandment. Obviously, no one can do that, and so then the Bible offers like a message of like hope. There's a Redeemer, there's a Savior that can like pay for your sins, and like He died on the cross to basically to wipe out those transgressions, and then some will have like eternal life or whatever. However, the biggest struggle that I had was there was always a back and forth. So like at the times where I felt like I was like living my life as it should be, or as I thought it should be, those were the times maybe I felt like I was saved. And then other times, like anytime there was like an evil thought, that would already put like a question mark in my mind. Oh, well, maybe you're not one of God's. And then it would be a back and forth. And that back and forth it basically oscillated like sine or cosine, like in mathematics, or like it was so volatile. I would describe it as like volatility in crypto markets. It was insanely volatile. a
Yep.
constant doubting, like, oh, maybe I'm saved. Oh, maybe I'm not. Maybe I mean, I used to go for like these long walks, like 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and I was in turmoil. It was torture. It was the worst kind of emotional and mental torture that you could possibly imagine, because and my brain is literally just like, there's like two opposing sides, and it's just a straight war going on in my mind. And eventually, if you continue down that path, it's guaranteed you will wind up in an insane asylum. Like, you might as well check into room 42069. Like, you're basically fucked. Right? I'm being funny, right? But yeah, it could be really, really bad. So my point is that you feel so much guilt because, so if you define, okay, let's ask the question, what is sin? So the Bible would define sin as a transgression of the law. What is the law? It's all the commandments of the Bible. So if you transgress one law, then you've actually broken all the commandments, and you're guilty of breaking the entire law. Well, so then you have, okay, well, Christ like saves you or whatever, and now he's your redeemer, and you're born again. And so you have like a new soul, and now you can follow him, even though you don't follow him perfectly. However, there's like this like, if you read like the book of Romans, like Romans, by the way, I haven't read the Bible in like 10 years. Like, this stuff is just like ingrained in the back of my mind. So I could still like quote like Psalms 51 or Romans 7 or like some of these other texts just because I grew up with it. But you'll read about like this like inner struggle or conflict. Where was I going with this?
The guilt.
Yeah. So like, okay. So let's say you're like allegedly like saved. Well, you still break God's commandments. But how do you know that, like, if you had become saved and you're breaking God's commandments, that you actually have become saved? Right? That's not exactly clear, because sure, you might have changed your life, and maybe you stopped smoking or drinking, or maybe you follow some of God's commandments, but you don't follow them all. But what happens, like, the thing is that you could technically, the Bible would hem you in just for thoughts alone. You look at a woman and you want to have sex with her, boom, guilty. Adultery, right? You look at somebody and you're like, oh, I hate that person. You look at Richard Hart, like, hey, I want to kill Richard Hart. Right? They're like all these guys like whining and bitching and moaning on fucking Twitter. I love Richard Hart, by the way. He's my he changed my life in a very positive way. But yeah, a lot of people hate him. But let's say they hated him and thought about killing him. Well, there you go. You're guilty of murder. Like, the Bible holds you to such a high standard that no one could actually live by that standard. So then it's not exactly clear whether you've become saved or not. And then it's taking a step back from all this. Let me kind of like, maybe I could just say some of the things that actually helped me walk away from this was taking a step back from the whole Bible, and I started to ask the right questions. The questions I started to ask is, well, because I started to think logically. I started to say, well, what if God like doesn't even exist?
Right.
If God doesn't exist, then the Bible's written by man and not inspired by God, and then therefore, like, it's just basically a bunch of bullshit. With I will say there's a lot of good text in the Bible that I think are actually good for humanity. Love your neighbor, forgive, just be kind, be gentle, love your wives, love your husbands. Like, there's so many good texts, and also some really interesting stories to read. You know, like Elijah, like going up in a chariot of fire, or like Jonah being swallowed by a whale, or just like crazy stories of like people being raised to dead. There's some, like, especially if you start reading through like Book of Kings or Chronicles, you know, you fucking read about Jezebel being thrown over and like trodden down by like dogs, and like just like bizarre shit, or Nebuchadnezzar like eating grass in the fields. Really, really interesting stories. So I think all that is really cool. But the whole point of all this is you have to ask like bigger questions.
Yeah.
Does God exist? If that God exists, are there multiple gods? Maybe many gods exist, right? And then a lot of times people assign a gender of God, like a male god, female god. What if there's many gods, right? There could be many deities. There could be one God. There could be no gods. I'm more like open-minded now. I really don't know. Right. I'm not sure I really care anymore. This is a vast, like, complex universe, and I actually think it's all just a bunch of randomness and arbitrary shit that just happens. That's just my mindset now. But let's assume that God exists, then we have to ask the next question: if God exists, did he actually write the Bible? And then, okay, let's assume, because what if he didn't write the Bible, it's just written by men? Well, you might come back and be like, well, God inspired men to write the Bible. Holy men of old were moved by the Holy Spirit to like write the text. I'm kind of paraphrasing, of course. I don't remember the exact like quotation. But even if you believe that, well, what translation are we talking about? Because the Bible was originally written in Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic, and then it was translated into many different languages, and the translators always projected their own interpretation of text in their translations. There's like maybe one that's like a word for word type of like translation. Like it literally just translates word for word. But most translators, like if you talk about King James or like New King James or some of those other texts, they translate text. They translated the text from the original languages into what the other languages based on their interpretation of doctrines. So they projected their belief system into the translation. Well, that actually matters, because then you could start to read through it and you'll see contradictions. Like as you read through the Bible, it's inspired by the Holy Spirit, there should be no contradictions. So if you can find a contradiction in the Bible, well, maybe it wasn't written by God, because God would be truthful and not a liar. So you see how with logic, you can actually kind of like work your way through all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was coming, out through that journey, basically, after, and I'll just touch on something real quick that, about that night where I had that revelation, friend came out, parents, and I just had this, I'm done with this. That night, I will never forget. I kept having these feelings because I was, what's the word? Denouncing, right? God. I couldn't stop thinking, I'm going to hell. I'm going straight to hell. And then I was like, wait, why am I even thinking that? Like, I don't believe this anymore, but I couldn't stop thinking like I'm going straight to hell because of this, like if I die, I'm going to hell.
Yeah. So that's fear-based, basically. Oh, go ahead. I'm listening.
Exactly. No, that's fine. But yeah, that's good point for sure. Very, very feeling fearful and guilty, and then I started to question, just like you. I started to back out and be like, well, who is Jesus? Who is this Jesus? And there's some really great documentaries on that story. I forget, I want to say like Bill Maher or something like that. There's a really good one that I liked a lot, because it showed that this Jesus story is not unique to the Bible.
No, there's many
the virgin birth.
Yeah.
There's so many in so many different cultures. That story exists. And you can see where it began in an older culture. And then that story was picked up and changed and altered. And exactly, exactly like what you're saying. It's the author's point of view, is put onto that. And that was my very jaded going through all that, and like being, opening up my mind to learning that, oh, this is not a unique story. This is not the only place where there's a virgin birth and a, boy prodigy, right?
Yeah.
Like that
back
story.
In the day, the Christians would have murdered you for even saying these things.
Right.
Which should actually demonstrate, if you preach about loving your neighbor and that you're a follower of Christ, but then you're okay with like murdering people because they don't believe the doctrines that you believe, like what? Like it's okay to to draw. How's it in the old days where they would draw and quarter people, like basically rip their legs and their arms off of them, right? Or like impale them or put them like, so, and also too, like even like the Christian martyrs in the early days, like those guys were willing to die for their beliefs, but I'm not sure that's worth it. I'm not sure it's worth it to be coated with honey, put in a basket, put in a high tree and stung to death by bees, just because you wouldn't like denounce like Jesus. Like, what about your family that you're leaving behind, right? Like, is that really worth it? And which Jesus? And what if Jesus doesn't actually exist, right? So like, and then, so there's this people, I feel like people, it's crazy with these, with any religion. I think it's an investment. You're investing your life into that religion. But what if that investment goes to zero, right? Like, what if like you thought it was like the bull run, and like when you die, you're in this like, it's like a glorious like life like in paradise, and like you're basically just living some amazing life where there's like no sin and it's like perfection. What if that's just like some fantasy and notice I'm just asking questions. What if it's like just some
Right.
delusional world that doesn't exist, or it could exist, right? Maybe it does. I don't really know. Like I don't think anyone
Exactly.
knows the answer to that. So like we could sit here
Exactly.
and speculate all day about whether God exists or not, but like how do you prove the existence of God, or how do you disprove the existence of God? Maybe like
Yeah.
a second coming from God, then we could like be okay. There's proof like he came back. Like okay, God does exist, people.
Right.
So
It,
I don't know.
yeah, it reminds me of a skit. And I'm gonna paraphrase, but there was who is it? Patton Oswalt does a skit where he basically is like talking about how there's these two guys, and one guy like wants to like make the rules or whatever, and in order to do so he makes up this story that there's this god in the sky, and if you follow what he's saying then you'll get sky cake eventually. And it's just I just remember him saying sky cake. But
Yeah.
I want to bring up I haven't seen a lot of the new comments because I wanted to bring this one comment up because I think it's a cool shout out to you. So this is from War Ants. It says, Gunther pulled me out of a moment. I was down 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I'd be typing this if he didn't reach out to me. Just fuck this and go on. Just fuck it and go
I
on.
like it. It's nice. It's nice to hear that. Thanks so much for that comment. And I've actually getting some very good comments from people, and that's why I like to have like real conversations where we're not really talking about crypto. Sure, like yeah, we want like our assets to go up, and everyone wants to make money. We're like, yeah, Hex, Pulse, Hex, Pulse, Doge. Hint, hint. I just gave you like the bag for success. Wink, wink. Um, but like people actually are struggling in life. They have real world problems. They're going through like painful divorce or suicide, or just immense like emotional pain that no one knows about. They're like everyone has pain, everyone has trauma, and we all suppress it and try to pretend that everything is well. But the fact of the matter is, like we could all of us can. Life is hard. It's okay for anyone to go sit down with a psychotherapist and like work through some of these issues, because like you'll just be better off. But yeah, I love hearing like positive stories like that.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of to that point of that skit, the Patton Oswalt skit. It's it's a tool for control.
Yeah. Actually, King James in 1611 wielded the Bible as a means of control. Look at the text in the Bible, like honor the king and honor God as you honor God, or whatever. I know I'm kind of like paraphrasing, getting that wrong, but like there was plenty of places where it talks about pay your taxes. Even Jesus paid taxes, right?
Yeah, so, pay to Caesar. What is his?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, or whatever. Go into the fish and grab that coin or whatever, and then go pay the tax authorities. Meanwhile, the guys were like, fuck this. They were like tarring and feathering like tax collectors.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another cool point, spiritual geometry. I love a lot of that stuff. There's a really cool and this is merging the worlds of spirituality and crypto again. Cosmic Cowboy did this really awesome speech at Hexpo Vegas this last year, and I think Discourse Syndicate just put it up on their channel within the last like month or so. So check that out if you're into this kind of spiritual geometry stuff, especially considering the hexagon. Like the hexagon is like nature's most perfect form. Bees make their honeycomb in hexagon shapes. When bubbles come together, bubbles are it's the one shape where the surfaces touch more than anything. Like it's the most perfect form, basically. And if you check out also Saturn, the planet Saturn, there's a storm on Saturn that is in the shape of a hexagon. It's the coolest thing. So that's a little not getting into the spiritual stuff so much, but yes, like I love that.
Have you ever wondered why, like when you're taking a bath and you have the bubbles sort of like migrate towards each other, and then they interlock and connect. I don't know. A lot of times just sat back and watched from a mathematical perspective, I guess. I'm a total nerd. I haven't even gone like that high in math. I've only done like calculus 1, 2, 3, and then I started like messing around on like linear algebra and differential equations. So like that's basically like the extent of my math education. But I've always thought it was fascinating, like what is attracting the bubbles to each other, and then they interconnect, almost like I guess like a blockchain type of thing, or like a mycelium type of like network. I don't know. It's just kind of very interesting. There's like anyway, maybe but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all neat. I was into numerology in general for a little while. All the taboo things that I couldn't do as a kid because it was all witchcraft and witchery, right? As soon as I was on my own and doing my own thing, I started reading tarot cards. I got super into astrology. I did numerology for a little while. And that all that stuff, like, to me, it's almost like it's all kind of the same. Like, like I pick and choose different things. Sometimes I prescribe a little bit more to astrology. Sometimes I don't pay attention to it at all. But I definitely do believe that there is a force. And I don't know if I would say, I definitely don't believe in the patriarchal type God, like that. There's a man in the sky kind of thing. Like that just doesn't, to me, that doesn't jive. And the moment when I stopped fearing and stopped feeling guilty about not being religious anymore was actually the first time I ever did DMT.
Oh,
because
nice.
because that moment, I already had this kind of feeling that we're all one, that we're all connected, that we're all love. And when I had that first experience of seeing and mind you, I had done other substances, but never had really had a visual experience. And anyone who's tried it knows that this is a very, flood of visual. I remember feeling like I was laying on this couch and I felt as if my soul went like this away from my body. And then I was just kind of in this world of light. Everything became light and sound and color. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is the river of life. This is what happens when we die. An interesting fact, when the moment we are born and the moment we die, our bodies are flooded with DMT. So that is experience. When people say that they're seeing angels or they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, or it's because they're starting to trip, basically. Like your body's taking you out into this like magical spirit world.
Like a coping mechanism. So maybe we don't have to fear death
as
much as we do, because we're all like, if we're honest with ourselves, I think most of us probably are afraid to die, or that we might die in some like horrible, like gruesome way. And so we're like thinking about the pain of dying, or like, what about like everyone we're leaving behind? But like, it's kind of interesting. Maybe that your body's like last, I guess, kindness or gift to you is that you can go out with like DMT, I guess.
Yeah, basically. I'm going to read a couple comments real quick here. Let me scroll through. Like this from Chris. Symbolism is a neat rabbit hole. This is a good one from Bit Finesse. Living life telling no lies beats all the religions.
Yeah.
And that's, that's kind of how I feel too. It's just like, if you can go through life and be the best you that you can be, I think that should be a religion.
Yeah.
Like be the best 100% you.
agree. Like that, I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I've had some tweets recently about that. Like, I don't really want to focus on like what other people are doing, even though like you'll see Wolverine come on like Twitter and like ranting and raving and like angry about getting mega dumped on by people that are like lying and like hiding shit and like deceitful. And there's like so much corruption because I can see what's happening behind the scenes. At the same token, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure that I really care that much. I really just care mostly about like, how can I be the best version of myself? how can I just improve me? How, like, because I have enough I have enough introspection and like self-awareness to be like, okay, these are all, I know a lot of my problems. I have a teenage daughter, and like they will let you know, like, hey, here's where you're fucking up. But it's good though, because if you don't take offense to that and actually listen to what they're saying, then it's like a great form of constructive criticism and critique. And you can grow from that, and you may not be able to change overnight, but you can at least think about it and think of ways of where you could just change your behavior. It's just not exactly clear to me who's actually in control of your psychology, because psychology is so complex that even if you want to really, really change, it's not exactly clear how to change. By what methodology do you actually change? Do you stop doing the things that you're doing, even instead of just like doing them and like apologizing to someone and like you're sorry because you like fucked up, but like how do you actually stop doing those things and stop hurting people and stop like ruining the relationships that are the most important to you? At least these are just some of my thoughts like recently on the topic.
Yeah, I'm gonna read this little comment here. It's from Crypto Military Vet. 3 years ago, on my first DMT journey, a gold sphinx told me to start loving myself.
Nice.
I've been med and alcohol free for 2 years. She saved my life. And it, similarly, I don't, I did that I had that experience, and I've actually recently been, I've been a weed smoker for a long time, and I think I'm 7 days sober right now. Which is, it's cool, it's not something that I feel like I really depended on or whatever, but it was getting to a point where I was just like, I really want to use this more as medicine. I don't want it to be something that I'm just doing to, like, I don't know, elevate my my emotions, or like,
Yeah.
I want to know that I have my own, I can be emotionally keeled, because it's been, except for that year that I was with the abusive guy, because he was not into the smoking, he would not allow it. So
that sucks.
yeah, for sure. And so outside of that year, I've had breaks here and there.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now with it. I'm not a big drinker. I really don't do other substances much. But for me, it would come, if I was going to, I'd want it to be in a place where it's something that I'm doing to really go internal, instead of it being an external, like to avoid or to cover up something externally. I want to be sure that anytime that I'm, using a medicine, whatever it may be, that it's so that I'm doing something to connect to my higher self and to enlighten
Nice.
and bring out that, that being.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, I'm more of like
yeah.
social, like I'm a social drinker, smoker. So like,
Yeah.
it's just very rare for me, because I really don't like to drink. I don't like to do these things. Every once in a while, like I've done MDMA, that was awesome. Did shrooms one time, that was awesome. I've had edibles a few times. I've gotten wrecked so many times with edibles. Guys, be careful with edibles.
Yeah,
like,
be careful.
Everyone. Like I took an edible one time. I got high for 3 consecutive days. So like 7 days. So like,
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like it's also too, if you have a predisposition to mental illness and you do weed, that could trigger schizophrenia under the right circumstances. So you have to be aware of that and be careful. Like that would suck, right? To become schizophrenic.
Yep. Richard talks about that in SciVivor, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've never actually read SciVivor, by the way, but it probably would be a good read for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so just be careful with that stuff. But I'm more just do it for just to be chill. Like I've lived in California, so everyone like blazes up, like,
oh, so, for sure.
I don't know. It's like chill experience, like especially to unwind. But like I don't ever drink, by the way, when I'm unhappy or depressed or sad, or like you should never do that.
Yes.
So why would you take a depressant when you're depressed? Hello, you're magnifying that depression. That's like depression to the power of depression, right? That's like retarded. All right, it's stupid. I probably shouldn't use the word retarded, but yeah, it's dumb is what I'm saying.
Another great quote here from Furto Fantastico says, this is a quote from Seneca: "Religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful.
Nice. I like it.
Interesting. And then I'm going to go back to this. This is an interesting question. You guys believe in giants?
Fuck yeah.
I think I believe in giants.
I mean, we've seen giants
I don't know
before.
that they exist anymore, but
I mean, you've seen like Princess Bride, no? Like that's a
right?
giant.
Yeah, Andre the Giant. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
It
Reminds me
kind
of
of sucks that
Harry
he's
Potter.
dead.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was a big fan. Hagrid. Not that actor's not that big, but like, people who were large sized like that. I believe
Yeah.
that, we had people that were. I believe in fairies too, y'all. I do. Like, there'll be times I'm in a forest and I'm just like, that wasn't a firefly, that was a pixie. Like, I believe in magic. Yeah. Let's see what else we got here.
There's some fucking giants out there. I mean, I don't know of any personally, but there's some big people out there.
Yeah.
Usually basketball players.
Yeah. And this is kind of where I'm at. I had someone tell me once that like me saying that I was a spiritual person was like a cop out. And I'm like, what?
What does that mean?
Yeah. I was just like, what? But in what way? Because I think they were more religious. And I was just like,
Oh, okay.
but I can believe that I have spirit and that there is spirit and that we're connected through our spirits.
Yeah.
But not subscribe to a set of rules, via a religion.
Yeah. That's actually a good way. That's a good way of articulating it.
Nice. Stories of red-headed giants in Afghanistan. This is from Crypto Military Vet. Says, I heard stories of red-headed giants in Afghanistan that some soldiers encountered in some caves. Just rumors. Man, anytime I hear a vet talk about some shit, I listen, because one of my best friends is a vet, and just, like, y'all know and are on to more things than a lot of, civilians are aware of that exist,
Yeah, thanks for your service. I was in the Army for almost 6 years.
Thank you for your service.
Helicopter mechanic, yeah. I never deployed though. I had an opportunity to deploy, and I didn't have to go, so I stayed behind.
Let me see.
Sorry, guys.
I want to read a little bit out of SciVivor, actually. There's a few parts where Richard mentions religion. I thought this was really interesting that there's a subheading where he says how to create a cult, sales through lies. And yeah, I'm gonna read this for a little bit here. He says religion is interesting. If you wanted people to adopt your new belief system over their current one, a tactic could be to tell them they're allowed to do what they really want to do, and then in parentheses, take land from others, keep slaves, and subjugate women. And you can pretend that you're actually restricting them in some way. They don't mind at all. They don't have the guilt that any normal moral person would have regarding the inhumane treatment of fellow peoples. It's like selling someone a TV and saying that it was priced wrong and the salesman is going to get in trouble for offering such a low price, and that locks in the sale. This is because the buyer sees value in getting something they shouldn't have gotten. Perhaps in reality, that story was made up and they bring another special TV out for sale once that other person leaves the store. Offering people an excuse to believe that they're paying with effort that you think is valuable, for example, not working on Sunday, and pretending you're getting payment from them for the thing they really want by faking that they're paying you for the privilege of doing what they really want. By doing the thing you say you don't want them to do, which they didn't really ever care much about at all. And some of this is hard to wrap my brain around.
Yeah, my brain just melted.
I kind of. So it gets a little clearer. He says, so a preacher may say you're not allowed to work on Sunday, like it's a sacrifice, and preaches that you earn something with that sacrifice. But lo and behold, you didn't want to actually work Sunday at all. And now the preacher has not only given you exactly what you wanted, but also gave you pride in that you were being paid extra to do the thing that you wanted to do anyway.
Yeah,
he says that selling through lies is how the preacher can get a belief system to outcompete another one. And then this is where he clarifies it a little bit. He says, you can offer them more benefits with less cost, and followers won't think that it's fake, and that they're really just taking the easy way out. because you confuse the issue with these false payments and meaningless, simple behaviors that you require of them, like saying some prayers that take a minute or two, when all you really want from them is for them to obey what you say that isn't in the book, to have your food handed to you by followers, to have, depending on your cult, their female children handed to you to do with as you please. And this is, I think he's referring to like much older, right? Like sacrificial type cults.
Hmm.
As the sole privilege of the leader or a powerful sect or cult or religion. Who is more important and secure in a society than the person that's responsible for God's goodwill towards you? Can you imagine what would happen if you insulted such a prophet? So that's one section where he talks about it. And then this is just a little quote that he says that I really liked. It says, "For a religion to succeed, it must actually have a church, a belief structure that tends the heart and the songs and the ritual stuff that goes around it, and often, sadly, the us versus them mentality." Which,
Hmm.
you know, what that was another thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And when I started to, you know, kind of come out of the church that I was a part of, I kind of gravitated more towards, I thought maybe I'd go to like a Unitarian church or something like that because it was
Hmm.
more all encompassing, because I didn't believe that either. I just couldn't wrap my head around, this is the one way. There was only one way and that's it. And everybody else is going to hell. I just like, I was just like, that doesn't make sense. Like that doesn't compute to me. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
how
not
is it that,
logical.
yeah, like how, you know, how could what I believe, you know, be the only thing when there's people on the other side of the world that have never heard about this, you know, that like they subscribe to their own rituals and religions, like that just, yeah, it hurt my brain.
You know what's fascinating is that cryptos are essentially cults. If you think about it, you have one giant community that gets together and they all believe in the same thing and they'll fight to the death for that thing. And then we become tribalistic and maximalist in that thing that we hold, because like our money is tied up into it and there's like ownership bias. But then we also have like a connection. We connect with the people, like in the Hex community, for example, we all connected to each other because everyone like hated us and like labeled us as a scam. And everyone like said it would be a rug pull and we'd lose all our money. And then in the end, they were all wrong because a lot of us became like multimillionaires. And so like now we flex on them with like supercars on Twitter, right? So like, right. So like there's to a very high degree, I think what makes crypto so successful is that they're so similar to cults. We just have like, we just believe in one thing and we like one main thing, and then the asset itself, and then we just like come together and like support like each other along the way. So it's actually fascinating to kind of understand that, like not in a bad way. It's just like these cryptos would not have value if that did not exist. I think like super
Right.
important. Like if you have a crypto and your Telegram chat, for example, is like dead, like there's no activity, or like it's just a bunch of like salty bag holders, I guarantee you that that will be reflected on the price chart. Like that's why, like for example, in the Pulse Doge like Telegram chat, that chat is so active. It's like everyone's like positive in the bear market. They're like having a good time. You got like they're posting like these cool memes. Like just like everyone's like posting like pictures of dogs and like creating like these like dog leagues and like NFTs and like airdropping like these unique like dog creations to like top holders, for example. Like someone got like Giga Doge and there's like other like Doges that you can get. So anyway, like the point is that everyone's just having a good time. Look at the price chart of Pulse Doge versus like other charts. It's up like over 2x in a brutal and violent bear market and a
Yeah.
hyperinflationary claim phase where like all the supply is introduced in like 100 days. So it just anyway, it's just kind of interesting. Like the community, um, and then if you compare like Hex, for example, Hex has been like so like, you know, we can go to war with each other and we're like divided and like fighting about like every possible thing. And then like the price chart too is just like getting murdered. And like the Telegram chats are all like salty, like bag holders, and like they're people that are buying are being used as exit liquidity, and you got whales playing like manipulative games of where they're like soliciting like exit liquidity, but meanwhile they're setting up sell walls and they're mega dumping on you, and then setting up buy walls so they get a stronger position, and then plebs get like shaken out because they don't understand what's actually happening. They don't understand like market psychology. So anyway, it's kind of just fascinating to kind of compare the two. Oh, so cute.
Talking about doges, had to bring my little doji on.
Yeah, hell
This is
yeah, I like
Reese.
it. You should take a screenshot, use it for like a thumbnail or something. That's cute.
She's sweet. Yes. There's a comment that I want to bring up. Because we talked about this a little bit earlier, so I'm going to bring this up. But I disagree. So Ferdo says prayer is a neurological disorder, schizophrenia-like expression where the affected believes he or she is communicating via mental telepathy with imaginary friends. Viruses are known to cause it. I understand that perspective. I get it. But yeah, faith psychosis. And I do think that there maybe are some people that can apply to. But we were talking earlier, Ferdo, and I honestly believe that prayer has value. I think that, even though I don't pray to a deity, I don't pray to an entity, I put those thoughts out into the world. And that's my form of prayer. My mom, on the other hand, very religious. She's a Christian, and she prays to her God and to Jesus. And while I don't, necessarily subscribe to that ideology, I love that she does it. I think that it's a beautiful thing. I think that there can be a lot of good behind prayer, because it's almost like you're using that power of positivity in a way. I think it's like almost a different form of kind of like The Secret and the power of positivity, where you're putting out these thoughts and these intentions, and hoping that the universe, or in my mom's case, God, will answer to that call.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point.
Prayer could also be very helpful for some people. Okay, let's assume that he's right. Let's assume that it is imaginary. Well, if that person goes and prays for like an hour, and even if they're praying to someone that doesn't exist, but they feel better, and even if it is some type of fantasy or in like some delusional world that doesn't really exist, it's imaginary, or like some type of like meme world. I don't know. Maybe it's good for that person, because maybe they're like happier, right? Like a lot of times I think people go into religion as a coping mechanism for like extreme suffering in life. They don't know how to cope with life. And so there's qualities and characteristics about religion that attracts people to those like belief structures or systems or ideologies or whatever. And their life actually is possibly better. And if they were to walk away from all of that, it actually might be harmful for some people, where they might like end up like taking their own life or something, because they don't know, they basically have no hope. They have nothing to look forward to. They don't know how to like continue in life, because like they've just believed a certain way and now they have nothing. Right. I sort of had some thoughts like that. Like just like I was just felt like totally lost, and there's no sense of identity. So Exhibit makes a good comment too about meditation.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's pros and cons. Like, I don't know. That's why I think it's super important to be really open and flexible, and just like be understanding of like all faiths and all religions. You don't have to subscribe to them. You don't have to subscribe to their doctrines, but just be sensitive to people, I guess. Like there's no need to like convince people and proselytize and try to convert them into a certain way of thinking. Why not? What like, it's kind of like give people back the keys to their own wallets from like a religious perspective. Like, let people control their own ideologies and how they want to live their life, whether they want to follow certain doctrines in a text, or whether they just want to like live like what they would classify as like a good life based on their own just idea of like what's good or bad, or like what would be good for the world.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see a couple more comments here. Yeah, manifestation. Yep, human mind is powerful for sure, and so much more powerful, I think, than we even like can imagine.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's stories of people healing themselves through mental capacity. Like what? You know, that's real. That's legit. Like that has happened.
The manifesting is interesting. Like I know on the first day I entered Hex, I knew that day in the future, I had this like intuition or gut feeling that in the future I would become a multi-billionaire from going into Hex. And that's one of the reasons why I went into Hex with like $8,000 on day one, even though that was a poor decision. I should have dollar cost averaged. But like I guess I understood the value proposition instantly. And my mindset was already a billionaire mindset. And it's just fascinating to me that I made a series of decisions that would lead me, that would allow me to at least put me on the right trajectory towards that. Obviously, I'm not close to that yet, but I think it's possible to get, I think for a lot of us, it's possible to get to that point maybe in just a few years. It won't just be Richard that's a multi-billionaire. I think there'll be a lot of players that in Hex, Pulse X, Pulse, Doge, possibly, maybe
I'm holding my Doge.
Hold it, buy it, hold it, buy it, keep buying. Hit the buy button. Hit the buy button, folks. Please hit the buy button. Paint green candles on the chart. You know why? Because that's the best form of marketing. Imagine like the only chart that's green and going up while everything is getting murdered and like just annihilated and like this is a sea of blood. And then you get like green candles on the chart. Paint it up, hit the buy button.
Oops.
I was wondering what happened. Did you like leave?
I forget. I have a Mac now. It's my like first Mac, and when if you go like this on the pad, it'll scroll you back to the previous page.
I hate Apple computers. Please, if you bought something, go take it back. Or if you're thinking about buying a computer, buy a PC.
I have my crypto laptop's a PC. I just wanted to try it out. I've never had a Mac before. It's all right.
It's not even like user friendly though. Like it's weird.
It is weird. I have to keep like looking up how to do things.
Yeah. Like if you got to go research on how to do something, it's poor design.
Yeah. It's okay though.
I'm bearish on Macs and bullish on PCs.
Let's see. That's what I was doing because Joshua said that the title isn't respectful of all religions. I was like, what did I call this? Yeah. How I escaped a cult and thoughts on religion. I don't know. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thoughts on religion in general.
I think it's all right. I mean, honestly, it's like there's different sides to it. Like from like our backgrounds, like it scarred us to a very high degree.
Yeah.
So like from our perspective, like religion was harmful, but for other people, religion can be like very positive for them. So I just think there's like two different sides to that coin. I'd actually be more curious about your background, like growing up with like in a charismatic like Pentecostal church where they're like speaking tongues and people falling over backwards. I've always looked at that. I'm like, this is a bunch of bullshit. There's no way. I was like, these guys probably screening people out the door, and then there's like a communication network, and so then they're just talking to people, and then people get duped. Like it's just like a form of like deception. I've never actually seen or thought that it was like real, but then you also have stories of where people actually get healed. But maybe that was just like the body itself because they thought positively and like that like kept them alive. Whereas you could think a certain way and well, that might actually like kill you because let's say you just lost a spouse and you were in love with that person and maybe you die like a few days later. Like you hear stories like that. So that's kind of interesting, like where you just essentially give up the will to live. So I'm not an expert with these things. I'm just speaking from a
from personal experience.
Pleb brain.
Yeah, neat. Well, I think that was quite a discussion. I think we did good.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a little time between. I know you got another stream to do, so.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Give you a little break. And I appreciate everyone being here. All the comments, this is the kind of discussion and discourse that I want to keep having. I'm going to try as hard as I can to be here every Sunday. And we're just going to kind of keep going on with, what we can do to SciVive together. Whether that's talking about religion or, substance abuse or porn addiction, like, whatever it is, like, let's bring it up, let's talk about it, and as we call ourselves a family, let's dialogue as a family and continue to open each other's minds. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that we're here to really just I mean, in my view anyways, to become more open-minded and to have more empathy and to love one another and to be love, because that again, that to me, that's my religion. Love is my religion, and love is God and God is love, in my opinion. So that's what I'm
Yeah.
going to continue to put forth into this world.
Yeah. And if you're not producing a positive effect in the world, then you have to step back and ask yourself, like, is that really the life that you want to live? Like, if it's always negativity, and you see this all the time in like Telegram groups and on Twitter, people are just so like salty and negative, and they just always like project so much negative emotions and energy onto you. This message for you guys, like, is that really like the best play? Right. And I mean, it applies to all of us, right? Not just like those, but like every one of us. We have to actually just step back and be like, okay, if I'm living my life a certain way, maybe that's just not really good for the world. If we want to have a more lasting legacy, and where we really do change people's lives like one by one, then we have to think about how can we produce a positive effect versus a negative one. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me
well
on.
said. Yeah, great words to end on. Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks again for everyone watching. Take care, y'all.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.